All right, so you're thinking about a career as an exhibition curator.
Yeah, it's a cool field, definitely.
It is fascinating, and we're doing a deep dive today looking into some stuff from RoleCatcher.
Okay.
They've got career guides, interview tips, all sorts of insights to help us really figure out what this job is all about.
It's definitely a job that is changing a lot, especially with how much museums are using technology now, to reach people.
It's true. And the guide was saying it's not just about art anymore. Like, you've got to be good at research and design, writing, even project management. It's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, I have good taste, let me put these things over here.
Right, exactly. You really have to think of curators as like the storytellers for the museum.
Oh, okay.
They're deciding what stories they want to tell, how to show them off visually, and how to make sure people connect to those stories too.
So it's about the whole experience someone has in the museum. It's not just like, here's a bunch of old stuff, look at it.
Yeah,
And I guess that's where the technology comes in, right? Like, they were talking about that in the guide.
absolutely. Yeah. A lot of museums are using VR and AR now, trying to make things really immersive. So like imagine, instead of just looking at a picture of an Egyptian tomb, you can actually feel like you're walking through it. Or using augmented reality to make those old objects come to life.
Wow. See, now that's why they said you need computer skills, right? I remember that from the guide. Computers and electronics knowledge, they call it.
So not even just knowing how to use the computer, though, right? It's being able to use that technology to tell a story.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So you've got your interactive displays, figuring out how to manage all the digital stuff, even putting exhibitions online for people who can't physically be at the museum.
So you're almost like a tech-savvy project manager in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of, managing expectations, they had a whole section on the pros and cons of the job,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to think, oh, I love art and history, this will be amazing.
Right.
But it can be tough, right? It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of competition for jobs.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance. You have to be honest with yourself. Like, can I handle the hard parts too, not just the fun stuff? And I like that the guide didn't try to make it seem easier than it is.
Yeah, totally. It's
Wow.
not always glamorous. Long hours, applying for grants, dealing with, all the museum rules and stuff. It's not always easy.
Okay, so we've established it's not just like if you love art history, you're good to go. You need other skills and knowledge. What about like your actual education? I noticed the guide mentioned some unexpected paths.
Yeah, you don't always just see people with art history degrees. More and more curators are coming from anthropology backgrounds, library science,
Hmm.
even law and government, believe it or not.
Computer government to work in a museum. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you think about it, right? You have to deal with the laws about artifacts, how museums are run, even requests to return objects to their original countries. It's complicated.
True. And museums aren't just there to show you stuff from the past. They shape how we see the world, how we understand different cultures.
For sure.
So it makes sense that curators would need a wide range of knowledge to do that well.
Yeah, and that's why it's so valuable to have a variety of skills in this field, to be well-rounded.
So, like, someone who loves technology, but they also studied anthropology or something, they could actually work in a museum.
Totally. In fact, museums are looking for people who can bring those different worlds together.
Wow.
They need people who know how to use technology to tell those amazing stories about the past and to connect with people from all different backgrounds. It's actually a really exciting time to work as a curator, with all that's changing. It really is. And speaking of exciting, we should probably talk about how you actually get one of these jobs right.
Right, because it's one thing to have the right skills and everything, but actually getting hired,
Yeah,
it can be a whole other challenge.
totally. Especially these days with how competitive it is. I thought it was funny. The guide actually used the phrase like beating the automated recruiter.
What?
Yeah, like you got to outsmart the system.
Oh, man.
Because so many companies use those applicant tracking systems now to sort through applications.
Oh, right.
So it's not enough to just be qualified. You have to know how to make your applications stand out, both to the computers and to the actual humans doing the hiring.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do you do that? I mean, is it just like really emphasizing how much you love history and art?
Well, it's more than that. The guide really stressed how important it is to tailor your application for each specific job you apply to.
Oh, okay.
Like really highlighting the skills they're asking for, using the right keywords, that sort of thing.
Huh.
They even had examples of interview questions that are common for exhibition curators, which I thought was super helpful.
Oh, that's great. So you can kind of like practice your answers ahead of time.
Exactly. It's like having a cheat sheet in a way. Yes,
Nice.
you're not caught off guard. And you can show them that you're not just knowledgeable, but that you really get what's important in the museum world.
Right.
You understand the job. There was this one line that really stuck with me. It said something like, recruitment is basically run by robots now, so it's more like a lottery.
Mm. Oh, wow. That's kind of scary, honestly. A lottery.
Right. But it just shows why it's so important to be smart about it.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on luck. You have to be strategic.
So that's where RoleCatcher is really useful, it seems like. They're not just telling you what the job is. They're helping you figure out how to actually get it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about giving people the tools they need to succeed.
Right. And, it's been interesting going through these guides because they really highlight how being an exhibition curator is more than just a job. It's about shaping how people learn about history and culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
about sparking that curiosity, getting
Yeah.
people to think about things in new ways,
Yeah.
and creating experiences that resonate with people, from all walks of life.
And that seems especially important now with museums trying to be more diverse and inclusive.
Right. And that's something that's really changing the field, and it's a conversation worth having in more detail.
It really is. And you're right, we should talk more about that, how museums are becoming more inclusive. Because those RoleCatcher guides were really helpful, but they focus mostly on the how-to stuff.
Yeah.
But it makes you think what happens to the curator's job as museums try to bring in more diverse voices, more perspectives on history?
Totally. That's a big question for museums right now. And there isn't one right answer, is there? I mean, the curator of the future can't just know a lot about, the stuff in the museum.
Right.
They've also got to be aware of all those different perspectives, all those different ways of seeing history, because it's not one story, right?
It's true. For a long time, museums felt kind of, I don't know, like it was the same kind of story being told over and over in the same way.
Absolutely. And that's what's so interesting now, I think. Curators have to look at what they already have, those collections, and find new meanings in them. They've
Yeah.
got to bring in different voices, tell those stories that haven't been told enough,
Yeah.
and find ways to connect with more people. So it's a really dynamic time to be doing this work.
It's a big responsibility too, right? It's not just about showing the past. It's about, like you said, deciding which parts get highlighted, whose stories get told.
Absolutely.
I know.
And that changes how we understand the world, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the skills you need.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just be an expert in art or history.
Yeah.
You have to understand how to engage with different communities, be sensitive to cultural differences, and represent things ethically. It's a lot.
It's like you're almost a cultural ambassador or something, building those bridges between the past and now.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And we can't forget about technology. We rely on it more and more to reach people all over the world. So curators need to know how to use those tools, too, to tell those stories in ways that are engaging, that really draw people in.
So basically, being an exhibition curator, it's not just one thing, is it? It's this whole mix of creativity and research and technology and understanding people and
It's a lot, yeah. But for the right person, someone who's passionate about history and art and making those connections, it could be an amazing career.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to wrap things up. So, for everyone listening, we hope this deep dive into the world of exhibition curators has been helpful. It's clearly a field that's changing fast, but one thing that remains constant is the power of museums to teach us, inspire us, and help us see the world in new ways. So, next time you're in a museum, take a moment to really look around, think about the work that went into creating that experience, and how those choices shape what you see and how you understand the past. And who knows, maybe it'll even spark some ideas for your own future. That's it for us today, but keep those minds curious, and we'll catch you next time.